Madison Rodriguez sat in her living room in Boston, Massachusetts, staring at the pile of journals dating back to her childhood. At 35, she had built a successful life as an architect, yet something had always felt missing, a void she couldn't explain. The recurring dreams had started 3 months ago, always the same scene. She was selecting experiences from what appeared to be a great hall filled with light, surrounded by beings of radiance who felt like family. "You chose this path," a gentle voice would say in the dream. "Remember why." She'd wake with tears streaming down her face, filled with a profound sense of purpose that quickly faded with the morning light. Her friend Michael had given her a book on Edgar Cayce's readings after she mentioned the dreams during lunch last week. "The sleeping prophet might have some answers for you," he'd said with a knowing smile. The book sat on her coffee table, its pages already dog-eared from intense reading sessions. Madison traced her finger over a passage she'd underlined. "Before entering the earth plane, each soul selects the major experiences and relationships it will encounter, chosen for the purpose of spiritual growth." "If I chose this life," Madison whispered to her empty apartment, "why can't I remember the reason?" That night, she dreamed. Again, but with startling new clarity. She saw herself, yet not herself, in what seemed like a planning chamber between lives. She was discussing with other souls what lessons she needed to master in her next incarnation. "You've avoided confrontation for several lifetimes," one being said gently. "The pattern of running from conflict has prevented your growth." In the dream, Madison, or the soul she recognized as her essence, nodded with understanding. "I choose difficulty this time," her soul self said. "I choose parents who will challenge me. I choose the path of creating beauty from chaos." Madison woke with a gasp, heart pounding. The dream felt more real than her waking life. She grabbed her journal and began writing frantically, capturing every detail before it could slip away. Later that day, Madison visited her parents' home in the suburbs, a trip she typically avoided. Their relationship had always been strained. Her father's criticism of her career choices, her mother's emotional distance. Today, however, she looked at them with new eyes. "Dad," she said as they sat in the garden, "tell me about when I was born. What was happening in your life then?" Her father's expression softened unexpectedly. "It was the hardest time of my life," he admitted. "I just lost my architecture firm in the recession. All my dreams gone." He looked at her with a vulnerability she'd never seen before. "When you came along, I was angry at the world. I didn't want you to face the disappointment." "I did." Madison felt something shift inside her. "And yet I became an architect anyway, and a far better one than I ever was," he said quietly. That evening, Madison read more about Cayce's concept of life planning. According to his readings, souls often chose to incarnate with those they had unresolved karma with from previous lives. The difficulties weren't punishment. They were opportunities for growth, selected by the soul itself. She thought of her father's failed architectural dreams and how she had fulfilled them through her own career. Had she chosen him specifically, knowing the challenges would forge her into who she needed to become? The patterns were beginning to make sense in ways that both terrified and liberated her. Over the following weeks, Madison immersed herself in Cayce's readings about soul planning and life purpose. She joined a study group that met every Thursday evening in a small metaphysical bookstore near Cambridge. The circle of 7 strangers quickly became her sanctuary. What Cayce described as life readings suggests that our souls make agreements, contracts, of sorts, with other souls before incarnation, explained Eleanor, the soft-spoken woman who led the group. These contracts create the framework for our most significant relationships and challenges. During one meditation session, Madison experienced a vision so vivid it left her trembling. She saw herself in what appeared to be ancient Greece, working as a sculptor. In that life, she had abandoned a significant commission to flee with a lover, leaving a community project unfinished. The man she recognized as her current father had been the patron who suffered disgrace from her actions. "I think I'm remembering why I chose my father," Madison shared with the group afterward. "I believe I'm working through a debt from another time." Eleanor nodded. Cayce often spoke of how souls return together to resolve unfinished business. What feels like punishment may actually be self-chosen redemption. Madison began to notice meaningful synchronicities. A client requested a community art center design, remarkably similar to what she had abandoned in her Greek life vision. She threw herself into the project with unprecedented dedication. She also started having spontaneous memories while awake. Walking past a violin shop, She was suddenly overcome with the knowledge of how to play, though she'd never taken a lesson. Her fingers seemed to remember the movements, and melodies filled her mind. Music was always important to you, her mother remarked when Madison mentioned this experience. As a baby, you would stop crying the moment Bach was played. The doctor called it unusual for an infant to respond that way. Madison began researching Bach's life and was stunned to discover he had lived in Germany during the early 18th century, exactly when her violin-playing memories seemed to be from. One night, Madison dreamed of standing before what Cayce had described as the Akashic Records, the universal memory where all soul experiences are recorded. A guide showed her a book of her own lives. You chose this particular life, the guide explained, not just to resolve old patterns, but to fulfill a creative purpose. You promised to build spaces where healing could occur. The Community Arts Center project suddenly took on new meaning. Madison reimagined the design completely, incorporating healing gardens, meditation spaces, and studios specifically designed to facilitate creative therapy. When she presented the new concept to her clients, they were silent for a long moment. "This is extraordinary," the board chairwoman finally said. "We were just approached by a medical foundation wanting to fund therapeutic art programs for trauma survivors. This design is exactly what we need." Madison felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't known about the foundation's interest. Later that week, she accompanied her father to his physical therapy appointment following his recent knee surgery. As they sat in the waiting room, an elderly man approached them. "Rodriguez, Richard Rodriguez?" the man asked, looking at her father. Her father squinted, then his face lit with recognition. "Professor Hammond, it can't be." The man, her father's former architecture professor, embraced him warmly. "I've followed your daughter's work. Remarkable talent. She's accomplished everything you talked about wanting to do back in my classroom." Madison watched her father's eyes fill with tears. "She has, hasn't she?" That night, Madison dreamed of the planning chamber again. This time, she saw her father's soul and her own making a pact. "I'll help you fulfill what I couldn't," her father's soul promised, "but it will require me to show you adversity." "I accept," her dream self answered, "and I'll help you heal your regrets." As autumn turned to winter, Madison found herself drawn to the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment, A.R.E, in Virginia Beach. She took a week's sabbatical and made the pilgrimage, feeling guided by something beyond rational understanding. In the A.R.E library, surrounded by thousands of Cayce's readings, Madison felt an overwhelming sense of coming home. She spent hours reading case studies of individuals who had received life readings from Cayce, many describing purpose-driven soul choices similar to what she'd been experiencing. During a guided meditation session at the center, Madison had the most profound vision yet. She found herself observing what appeared to be her soul planning session before this current life, but now she could see the full council of beings who were helping her plan. "You've mastered individual creation," one radiant being explained. "In this life, you will learn to create spaces that facilitate healing for many souls at once." Another spoke. "The father relationship will be challenging but necessary." Both souls have agreed. "And what of the soul-mate connection?" asked a third being. "Not this time," replied the first. "That would distract from her purpose, but a glimpse will be permitted to maintain hope." The vision shifted, and Madison saw a comprehensive blueprint of her current life. The challenges carefully placed at specific intervals, the people positioned at crucial junctures, even apparent random encounters designed to nudge her toward her purpose. She emerged from the meditation with tears streaming down her face, but feeling more centered than she had in her entire life. That evening, while walking along the beach, Madison encountered an older woman sketching the waves. Something about her seemed familiar, though Madison was certain they'd never met. "Beautiful evening," the woman remarked, looking up from her drawing. "It is," Madison agreed, pausing. "Your sketch captures something beyond just the waves." The woman smiled. "I try to draw the energy, not just the form. I'm Eliza, by the way." Madison. They talked as the sun set, and Madison felt an inexplicable comfort in Eliza's presence. When she mentioned her interest in Cayce's work, Eliza's eyes sparkled. "I've studied his readings for decades," she said. "His insights on soul planning transformed my understanding of my own life. I've been having memories, dreams, experiences that suggest I chose this life deliberately," Madison confided. Eliza nodded. "Cayce would say you're experiencing soul memory. The veil thins when you're ready to understand your purpose." As they parted ways, Eliza handed Madison her sketch. "I believe this is meant for you." Looking at the drawing later in her hotel room, Madison noticed something she hadn't seen before. Hidden in the pattern of the waves was a building design, remarkably similar to a concept she'd been developing in her mind for a healing center. The next morning, Madison received a call from her father. His voice sounded different, lighter. "Somehow, I found my old portfolios in the attic," he said. "All those designs I never built, I think you should see them. I'll look when I get back, Dad." "That's the thing," he continued. "There's one, it's almost identical to that healing center concept you mentioned at dinner last month. I designed it 40 years ago, before you were born." Madison felt the pieces clicking into place. The soul contract, the chosen purpose. It was all connected. Upon returning home, Madison opened a small package that had arrived from Eliza. Inside was a book of Cayce readings with a note, "Page 234 might interest you." She turned to the indicated page and found a reading Cayce had given in 1944. For before this entity entered the present experience, it chose those environments, those conditions, those periods through which it would pass. Know that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and all that in them is. The soul lives on and is given the opportunity to manifest in the material experience, that it may better comprehend its relationship to the Creator. Below this, Eliza had written, "We chose these lives not to suffer but to grow. The challenges are our curriculum, selected by our higher selves. You're remembering because you're ready to fully embrace why you came." That night, Madison dreamed of the Hall of Souls once more. But this time, instead of it feeling like a memory, it felt like a conversation happening in real time. "You remember now," said the being of light she'd come to recognize as her guide. "I do," Madison's soul self answered. "I chose this life to heal old wounds and create spaces of transformation. And now that you understand, what will you do with this awareness?" Madison felt herself smile, both in the dream and in her physical body. "Build what I promised to build. Love those I promised to love. Complete what was left undone." As she spoke these words, countless threads of light extended from her soul to others, past, present, and future connections, all part of a cosmic tapestry she had helped design. She awoke with absolute clarity. The void she'd felt her entire life was finally filled, not with answers, but with purpose. She understood now that she had indeed chosen this life, with all its difficulties and joys, as the perfect classroom for her soul's evolution. Madison reached for her phone and dialed her father's number. "Dad, those designs you found, I think it's time we built them together.